Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Yusuf Al-Rimawi, Nasser Mashni and Robert Martin. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Australia's only radio program that is totally dedicated to the Palestinian cause in English language. I would like to welcome our listeners on the AM dial and those who will join us later on the website 3cr.org.au/podcast. In today's episode, we will be talking to Laila Odeh, the correspondent of France 24 in Jerusalem. Stay with us and enjoy the episode. Good morning, Nasser.
Morning, Yusuf. How you doing?
I'm well, and today is the second day of Eid. Eid Mubarak to you, Nasser.
You too, and all our
to
listeners.
Your family, and to all our listeners, those who celebrate it, and those who don't celebrate it. So, blessed and happy festivity. And Nasser, also, I want to say congratulations for the APAN fundraiser dinner last weekend.
We had a phenomenal night, Yusuf, as you know, because you attended. We had a few of our listeners there.
Yep.
So a big shout out to Ray, one of our great listeners came up and said hello. A really fabulous night, a fundraiser. We had some great politicians, and you can go to the APAN website and Facebook and download those speeches and see them. But a really, really fantastic event. And what was really exciting on the Sunday night, we got a text from the Western Australian Labor branch. They've now passed a motion calling upon the next federal Labor government to recognise the state of Palestine. So the pressure is growing now for the national Labor program next year. So fingers crossed.
The snowball is getting bigger and bigger.
It's getting bigger
Palestine
and bigger.
will be recognised at least within Labor. Hopefully we'll see something federal next year.
Look, I think the tide is turning, Yusuf. We keep talking about this ground up. This is the people saying to their leaders, enough is enough. The belligerent occupation, 50 years of apartheid, of systematic ethnic cleansing. It's enough is enough.
And Nasser, that's a great news. Excellent, and congratulations again. And today we have a journalist from Jerusalem, Laila Odeh. Laila will talk to us about what it means to be a Palestinian journalist under occupation. So I'm looking forward to listening to her.
Great.
So stay with us and we will be with you shortly. Joining us from Jerusalem, Laila Odeh, France 24 channel correspondent to Jerusalem. Laila, thank you very much for taking the time and for being with us on a busy day. Tomorrow is Eid.
Thank you, and happy Eid for everyone.
Happy Eid to you and to all our listeners. Laila, if you could first, before we speak about the main topic of the interview, which is the role of Palestinian journalism in the last crisis in Al-Aqsa, if you could give us an idea or portrait of Palestinian media outlets in Jerusalem.
Yeah. The media, especially in Jerusalem, it's considering a very important side of the whole struggle in the city. It means that when we have media, we have the news, we have the full scene of the struggle between Palestinians and Israelis. The Palestinian media exists in Jerusalem, but of course, because of the city which is occupied by the national law. It is there is a limited actions for the Palestinian journalists. They are not given the full way of freedom to have full coverage of what's happening because of the Israeli measures taken by the one side by the Israeli security forces toward the Palestinian journalists. Especially, I'm talking here about the Palestinian journalists, and from the other side, from the press office, Israeli press office, which is not giving the press cards for the Palestinian journalists, especially in West Bank. They are looking forward to work in Jerusalem, and they have the right of working in everywhere because of the closure, because of the wall, because of the forbidding of not giving them the Israeli press card. They are forbidding or not allowing to enter Jerusalem to have the full coverage of the struggle between Palestinians and Israelis. The Palestinians working as a journalist in East Jerusalem and in Jerusalem, they have a lot of troubles, problems facing every day, almost between them and between the Israeli, especially security forces.
Now, just to help us understand this point right, Palestinian journalists need permits to practice media work in Jerusalem, right?
If they are not allowing to cover for example, the Israeli side, let's say in the ministers, in everywhere in the Israeli side, the meetings, unless they will have the Israeli government press office card. If they are not having this card, they are not allowing to be there in such places. There is a press conference, for example, like what was before 2 days, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Antonio Guterres. If a Palestinian journalist he doesn't have the Israeli press card, he can be in that office. And of course, although he has an Israeli ID, so these limits are limited the movement of the Palestinian journalists, especially in Jerusalem.
So the opportunity for a Palestinian voice to challenge the ruling power is limited by the issuing of this pass, and this is just another form of apartheid control that the Israelis and the Zionists inflict upon the Palestinians, yeah?
Yeah, we can say that if Israel is a democratic country, as it says, and having this with the very big flag, putting this flag in front of the whole world, that she's the only democratic country in the Middle East, she should act like that. So if a Palestinian journalist in Jerusalem having Israeli ID can't have Israeli press card because, for example, he has some problems or some taboo in the security issue, he can't have this press office card. So because of that, he can be limited by the movement or going here and there. And I'm talking about the main thing is the Palestinian journalists from the West Bank. They are not allowing to have this press card, and they can't have it because they can't, from the beginning, enter to Jerusalem because they don't have the permission to enter to Jerusalem to have the full coverage of the story.
So perhaps, Laila, we sort of fast forwarded today. Maybe can we have a little bit about your story? Let's personalise you, because you became a journalist when you were 14.
I was a journalist since I finished my university, and I was almost 21 years old, and I didn't study journalism. I studied Russian language and English language in Volgograd, and when I came back to Palestine, I was living in Bethlehem. I was born in Bethlehem, which is my city, but I'm a refugee from Jerusalem. I went back to Jerusalem after my marriage, and since '93, I live here in Jerusalem. So because I'm Palestinian, I have Israeli ID, and I have this press card, Israeli press card. I'm working since 24 as a journalist covering the struggle, Palestinian-Israeli struggle from all sides. I covered the Oslo Agreement Accord meetings. I covered the Second Intifada. I covered the Church of Nativity closure. I covered a lot of things, and now we're following this coverage by having the Aqsa crisis, last crisis, by putting the Israeli metal detectors, and it was almost getting the one step forward to the third intifada. Because of that, for the whole 24 years, I was a journalist working in a very, very hot spot in the region, and I think it was a very good experience for me
Absolutely.
to be here, to be a journalist in such very serious spot in the area.
You have a very long record of being on the front line of events inside Palestine, and you have mentioned a few examples. I'm sure there are tens or maybe hundreds of more examples like that. But if we could, and you mentioned the Al-Aqsa crisis, so if you could share some thoughts or memories from the Aqsa recent crisis, how the Palestinian journalists, what they had to go through to cover the Palestinian narrative in face of occupation, closure, army, settlers, and the list goes on.
For the 2 weeks of the crisis, and of course it was very long 2 weeks, day by day we were there. I was there covering with my colleagues. We didn't sleep. We had a very tension time at that time because the whole situation was in tension. So because of that, it reflected us as a journalist. When it started because of the Israeli metal detectors, after the two Palestinians killed 2 Israeli policemen. So it started from this point of view, act and reaction. So we were, as a journalist, as our job, we were there standing in front of different gates of the Al-Haram Al-Sharif or Al-Aqsa Mosque. I was in front for the 2 weeks in front of Bab al-Asbat, which was the main gate of having this conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis. We were eyewitnesses for what happened as a journalist with my colleagues. All the TV channels, Arabic TV channels, foreign TV channels, even Israeli TV channels were there. We were together standing in front of Bab al-Asbat. We saw everything in front of us. We saw the preventing of the Israeli soldiers with their standing there in front of Bab al-Asbat with their weapon, preventing prayers, worshippers from entering Bab al-Asbat, except who they have the ID that proves that they are living in the old city. They were allowed to get there, except that no one was allowed. Although also we as a journalist were not allowed to get there. We were prevented because there was a security decision to prevent anyone to get into Al-Aqsa Mosque. The whole scene was in front of us as a journalist. It was very tough time for both Palestinians, for the Palestinians from Jerusalem, and for us as a journalist. It was very hard. There was, a cooperation that united the journalists together with the information, with if anyone needed anything, there was a hand helping them. The people there were very helpful for us as a journalist with their food, with their water, with their everything. So it was, the Palestinians in Jerusalem had a very special view that we didn't see as a journalist for 24 years covering the whole issue. I didn't see that for the first time. Jerusalem was, I think, something special with the united working between them. With their, some of them were they did a government for their own as a Palestinians. They were very clever in having this crisis and in taking the flag and going forward with that issue. And they had their decision to pass this crisis, and they did.
Now, Laila, you spoke about the solidarity among journalists and Jerusalemites in general. in the last crisis. And I remember when I asked about a person to make this interview with, I spoke to Diala Jweihan, a Palestinian camera woman and journalist from Al Hayah Al Jadida newspaper, and she recommended you. So this sense of selflessness that was among, and still is among, the Palestinians of Jerusalem is something that really we regard very high. And like you said, we haven't seen that for a long period of time now. And I guess my next question will be about the targeting of journalists, because I believe every person who carries a camera or a microphone is a target to military occupation. And I'm sure whether by tear gas or by harassment. So if you could tell us more about targeting journalists and media people.
Yeah, I was through the last crisis. I was beaten by a soldier on my knee, and I kept telling him that I'm a journalist. He didn't listen to me, and he kept beating me on my feet. It hurted me, and I went for work at the next day, although I was beaten. So it's okay. I had a life bullet in Gaza before almost 2 years through the second Intifada. This is okay because I'm a journalist. I expect all these things. When I went to a Jenin camp to cover the massacre there, I told the camera woman, she was with me, Ronia Jweihan also, I told her we might be killed. She said, okay, I'm with you. What will happen for you will happen for me. And this is journalism. We are journalists, and we know that we can leave our house, but we can't go back. So it's expected. Targeting the journalists, it's when you're being in such hot, as I said, point of conflict, very hot spot in the region, like Jerusalem and West Bank, and standing in front of soldiers, they have only one order: to keep their lives from any danger. They didn't see us as a journalist. They didn't see anyone. They didn't see even the Palestinian women as worshippers or people having their one goal to have their prayer in Al-Aqsa Mosque. They didn't have a stone. They didn't have a weapon. They didn't have anything. They went only with their faith to have their prayers inside their mosque, Al-Aqsa Mosque. So soldiers didn't see all these things. They had in their own mind their orders from the high level, security level, keep your life safe. It doesn't matter who is standing in front of you, so you have to take the first step. So because of that, it was very hot in the situation was very serious, very dangerous for us as a journalist. I'm talking about that. We were targeted. A lot of journalists were injured. Rajai Al-Khatib, one of the Palestinian journalists, he was beaten very seriously also on his knee during covering the metal detectors removing. So a lot of journalists were beaten. A lot of journalists were forbidden from covering the full story, but we tried to find a place and a space for us in this crisis, and we succeeded in having that. I think one of the things that made the Israelis being very upset or
aggressive.
They didn't like being the whole. If you were there, you will see hundreds of journalists standing in front of a lot of Al-Aqsa Mosque gates, having their cameras, their reporters talking about the situation. Israel didn't like all these things.
Yeah, look, it's obvious that Israel doesn't like any sort of scrutiny. And we've had a couple of recent incidences, Laila. I wonder if you know any of these guys. Anthony Lowenstein, who's an Australian Jewish guy who's based in Jerusalem, he had a confrontation with Yair Lapid. And he asked him a question. He said, at the moment you've talked about the idea that Israel's done little or nothing wrong, but the truth is in 2017 is the 50th anniversary of the occupation. There are now 600 to 800,000 settlers, all of whom are regarded by international law as illegal. Is there not a deluded idea that many Israeli politicians, including yourself, continue to believe that one can talk to the world about democracy, freedom and human rights while denying those things to millions of Palestinians? And will there not come a time soon when other politicians will be treated like South African politicians during apartheid? And the right wing, wanted to take off his press card. We just had John Lyons, who was the senior editor for News Limited, which is the Fox papers, Murdoch papers. He's come back and published a book in Australia called Balcony Over Jerusalem. And one of the interesting things is he talks about like an acknowledged language that one can use when talking about Israel if you want to keep your press pass. So here you are, a Palestinian with a Jerusalem ID. You can go into the West Bank. Can you go into 48, into Gaza? What's it like for you going inside the rest of historic Palestine?
Okay, as a Palestinian having an Israeli ID, I can, of course, I live in Jerusalem. I can go everywhere. Also on 48 land, I can go, Jaffa, Yafa, everywhere. But in West Bank, if I want to go there, even if I can pass there, my family lives in Bethlehem. I can go there now, but before I couldn't. When there was the closure, we were forbidden. Even in one accident, I was, my boy, I have a boy and a girl, now they are at the university. They were at school. My boy finished his school and he wanted to show his remarks to his grandfather and grandmother in Bethlehem. So we went from Jerusalem to Bethlehem through the checkpoint. The soldiers asked me to open the window of the car. I did. I showed him my ID. He said, "You are Israelis. You are not allowed to enter to Bethlehem." I told him, "I'm not an Israeli, first of all. I'm a Palestinian having Israeli ID. This is first. Second, I'm going to Bethlehem, which is I was born there, and my whole family lives there in Bethlehem." He said, "I wonder," the soldier told me that, "I wonder why you are taking your children to such dangerous place." I told him, "You don't have the right to say that in front of my children. The people you are talking about them, they are their family, their grandmother, their grandfather, their aunt, and their uncles. I don't want my children to hear that they are dangerous. They are not dangerous. It's their family." So he didn't allow me. He said, "You have few minutes to leave the area, or otherwise I will arrest you." This is the situation. It was in front of my children. I was very angry for that because I didn't want my children. They were they were babies to hear such things. So this is what the struggle of existence, who we are, why we are here, why they are here. This is the point of view. Israel is playing a very clever game. The whole world, I always keep talking about that. We didn't reach as Palestinians, or the whole world didn't reach the main point of view of the Israelis. They are very clever people. They know how to exist in a place as from the occupation side. They don't have the right to exist in an occupied territories because of the international laws. It's not me who's saying that. It's the international law who's saying that Jerusalem, for example, is an occupied territory. So or city. Because of that, they are playing the game of being clever, telling the story from their point of view, telling what they want to tell, having their own story by their own way, speaking about democracy, but on the facts, on the ground, they are doing the opposite thing because of me targeted by an Israeli soldier. This is not democracy. I kept telling him that I'm a journalist. Raja'i al-Khatib also was injured seriously in his knee because he was a Palestinian, not a journalist. They treated us as a Palestinian first, then as a journalist. They didn't listen to us. We don't have, for example, the right to enter for having an interview with any Israeli official, high-level official, without having a security checkup. Maybe the soldier there or the security official might ask me to take off my clothes. This is what happened before 2 years when the Israeli elections happened, and I left the elections. I called France 24. I told them I'm not going to cover this thing. I was in Tel Aviv because I was the only one that was picked from the whole journalist, and I asked to take off my clothes. I told the soldier, "You don't have the right to tell me this thing. This is something that, for me, I can't take off my clothes in front of you. Although you are a woman, so I can't do it." I didn't do that. I didn't cover the elections. I left the place. This is my right, and of course, these things are because I keep always talking about that. They're treating us as Palestinians first, then journalists. They don't recognize us as a journalist without looking to our ID or faces or language, Arabic language. This is a problem for us being in Jerusalem and having the whole coverage. Because of that, if you talk about Israel, about the right wing or left wing or any wing you want, I think this is the problem, that Israel is having the game of being here, of existence for her from its point of view, and it succeeded in that. It is like, you know, when you're telling someone that I like you, I'm in love with you, and inside yourself you have different
emotions.
Feelings.
Now, Laila, you work for a European media outlet, and I'm sure with your long experience, France 24 is probably 10-year-old news outlet. Tell us about the public opinion in Europe and France in particularly, and how, if you witnessed any shift towards the Palestinian issue, and how rewarding it is for you as a journalist.
And France 24 TV, they are, as a lot of foreign TV channels working here in Jerusalem, they are interested in the Palestine-Israeli struggle. Because of that, we have our office in Jerusalem. I'm their correspondent here. They have let's say, very important coverage. If something happened, we cover it as it is. From my point of view, I think the whole European countries are interested in what's happening here. Why? Because what's happening here in between the Palestinians and the Israelis are reflected the whole region and also the whole world. Because of that, we have the whole media importance in having the offices here, paying a lot of money to have their offices, their reporters, their story from here. How they cover, why they cover, these are very important questions because, as I said, it's very important place, a very important conflict and struggle, and it's the whole region and area. How they cover, I think, I can speak about what I am covering, France 24. It has objectivity, not because I'm working with them, but
no, I watch France 24 Arabic, and I really like their coverage.
Thank you. So since the whole 6 or 7 years I'm working with them, none of them told me to say this or not to say that, or told me that the words you used weren't as we expected. No, this didn't happen for the whole many years. I covered from what's happening here in Palestinian territories and Israel. You don't need to have a lot of effort for having the full scene, because it's in front of you. You have occupation, you have Palestinians, you have wall, you have closure, you have the whole Israeli controlling on the whole situation. So you don't have a lot of effort to have it. Yeah. You need only your camera, and you need the full story of.
We just need an objectivity, a willingness to listen to the other side. Laila, we're fast running out of time. We've got about a minute left. Is there anything specifically you want to share with our Australian listeners that what they can do for Palestine? What message would you want to send to our Australian listeners?
I thank you for having me with you. I'm so glad. First time in my life having an interview with the Australian radio or channel. So I'm so happy for that. And I'm willing to have, the media. Before 2 days, I had an interview with the Palestinian journalist having his master in the Hebrew University. So I told him the media will be, more important than politics and economics or anything else in the world. He said I told him it will be the way of having the decision. Media in the coming few years will make the decisions. This is the difference. The media will make a lot of change. We are taking the first step. I don't want anyone to be frightened. We're taking the first step seriously for a very serious situation in the whole world. We're taking the first step for the Third World War. This is very important to know, because I'm expecting that, because the situation leading me to have this expectation. So because of that, I think media is very important. I think that Australia is so far geographically from Palestine, but I think it's very important to have more contact with Palestinian journalists, to have more contact with the situation, to be here in the situation, to have the full story and full coverage here. I'm very happy to be with you.
Fantastic.
And I'm so glad.
Well, what we'll do, Laila, is we'll put your bio and your LinkedIn link on our podcast, and we'll share that with our listeners so they can find your link, and fingers crossed some people can reach out to you and get some more content.
And we've been listening to Laila Odeh from Jerusalem, correspondent for France 24. Laila, thank you very much for being with us and for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to talking to you in future. Bye-bye. Thank you. So with this, we've come to the end of this episode of Palestine Remembered. Until we meet next time, next Saturday, this is Youssef and Nasser and Robert wishing you the best of time and salam.